And I would say this applies to every single thing. Like, if you have a product, just connect deeply with the audience that most needs it and most loves it, and serve them, and then let them be your voice out to the masses, and do it through curiosity. And that just works. It works as a business, and it works as an audience. So what's funny is with this, are you just preaching to the choir? It's actually the wrong way to look at an industry, is the unfortunate truth. The right way is to say, can I make a product that a group of people that I know better than the studios will love? And can I just serve them with that product? And then you just watch the snowball roll down the hill.
The story is almost 1/3 of the world's population is Christian, nearly 2/3 of the US population. Yet for decades now, Hollywood has had an aversion to explicitly Christian films, leaving this audience underserved or suffering with subpar productions. Why is that? And what's behind the recent resurrection of quality Christian content? I'm Joel Ackerman. This is Lightwise. Jon Erwin is an American film director, screenwriter, and producer known for such films as I Can Only Imagine, that's the title, and this year's Jesus Revolution. Along with his brother Andrew, he is co-founder of the Kingdom Story Company, which specializes in the production of Christian films. Jon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This designation of a Christian film.
Yeah.
What designates a Christian film?
That is a great question. Here's what I think it's not. Faith film, Christian film, first of all, it's not a genre. That's the wrong way to look at it. If you look at it as a genre, you would think that, okay, all these films have to look and feel the same, and you can only tell a certain story. To me, it's an audience to serve, and it's a cause to champion. And it's a set of values that, when presented well, are universally appealing and needed and written on our souls. How, quote unquote, overtly Christian the thing is, should be based on the story itself, and it shouldn't be forced. But I think, to me, I am from the South. I'm born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. I live in Nashville, Tennessee today. Christianity is a huge part of my life, has been since I was very, very, very young. And there's just this enormous underserved audience that needs content that reflects our values. And then I think Christianity is just a story of hope that the whole world needs. And I think that I like this verse in the Bible when it says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control. Against these things there is no law. I would be hard pressed in the society that we live in today to say who would raise their hand and say we don't need more of those things infused into stories. And so whether it's just infusing the values of Christianity into a story, or telling a story that champions Christianity and its transforming power, I think both are needed, both are valuable. So we embrace the label, I guess is the way to say it.
That's good. I was going to ask you how you feel about being considered a Christian film director.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to know you embrace it. Talking about serving the audience, however, and the spectrum from overt Christianity to the values and the beliefs, where do you fall in your interest in filmmaking on that spectrum? Clearly, you've done, as you said, Jesus Revolution and some of your other works very overt. Do you have films that are more like, say, Rudy or A Christmas Carol, where they're inspiring, they have prayer in them, or those kind of things, but they're not so overtly Christian?
Yeah, I mean, to me, what do they say? A filmmaker finds their story and tells it over and over again. We found our sort of lane with the movie Woodlawn, which came before the movie I Can Only Imagine, and it was an inspirational true story. And we just love true stories. So I like to tell true stories that move me, and that I think will move the audience as well, and are told in a way that really are infused with the things in which I most believe, and I would most like to see myself and others in society. And those things stem from truths found in the Bible. And I sort of let the audience, the marketing department decide, is it a quote unquote Christian film or not? One of the greatest guys that I've been able to pick their brain that has helped shape my thinking in what we do, this can sound strange, but is Jason Blum. And his company is called Blumhouse. It's set up at Universal, and he does horror and suspense. And he has made an empire out of it. And he's one of Hollywood's most successful producers, and has done.
What are some films that some people might know?
Blum's. I mean, his latest film is called Megan, Get Out, Split, the Halloween franchise, the Exorcist franchise. He's rebooting. I'm not condoning or recommending any of these, but what I found interesting was that he said that he felt that audience was disdained 20 years ago, and that Hollywood was like, they don't want real movies, you know? And he wanted to fix that. And the mindset was a mindset of service and serving an audience and doing it and choosing something specific and doing that specific thing better than anyone else. And so the idea that the narrower the focus, actually, the wider the appeal.
Yeah.
And so that's why we embrace the label. It's like when this enormous audience, I remember I was with an investor and his daughter, she was 19. And I said, you want to know what the opportunity is and the problem in faith? But it's the same thing in faith entertainment. And she said, sure. So I turned to his daughter and I said, let's play rapid word association game. Don't think about it. I'm just going to say something. So, okay. I said, Christian movies. And she goes, ew. And I'm like, in one syllable, she's defined the problem and the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that when an audience this large that I'm a part of is this underserved and yearning for better entertainment that represents their values, that is a wonderful thing to step in and solve.
I appreciate that you've not only embraced the label, but embraced the idea of serving an underserved audience. There's sometimes this idea that you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that idea? Like, oh, you're just preaching to the choir. You're not actually changing lives. These people believe the way you already do.
Yeah.
It would be better to tell stories with your values, but bringing them to a broader audience who's going to get turned off by that Christian label. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, we've learned this only by bleeding in the arena. I like that Brene Brown quote where she says, if you're not bleeding in the arena with me, I don't care about your opinion. This is a common question. Well, we're just preaching to the choir. What we found, and this is non-intuitive, but it works, the best way out is through a core audience. There's no such thing as mainstream anymore at all. And whether you're a horror movie or a Japanese anime thing or a superhero film, the way to get everyone's attention is to connect deeply with a core audience and serve them. And when that core audience gets excited and energized enough about it, they make noise, and you trip over into this category called FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And that is the way to the mainstream. So you can light so much money on fire trying to advertise to people that will never come see your movie, like Jesus Revolution. But when you open as the #3 movie in America and you have the whole industry saying, what just happened? Like, how did this happen? What is this? You target this category of moviegoer called frequent moviegoers. And frequent moviegoers pride themselves, I'm one of them, pride themselves on being in the know and having an opinion on everything that's out. So when you tip into the zeitgeist, because you've connected so deeply with your core audience, you end up doing millions and millions of dollars in business from people that would never go to your offering. And then lives are changed as they do. So we found that the best way to the masses is to actually go through the choir.
Well, it's a great
and
answer.
To preach to the choir. And I joke around that, like, with I Can Only Imagine, the first couple million tickets were our core audience, you know? But the next 8 million tickets that were sold in 6 weeks, and it did almost 86 million in box office. They were people that were just curious. And every week, the demographic, the audience got younger, the audience got more mainstream, the audience got more spiritual instead of Christian. And then we forget that entertainment is America's second largest export behind agriculture. So when you do well, for instance, at the box office, by connecting deeply with your core, it triggers all these foreign output deals that are just based off the arithmetic of the box office. So right now, Jesus Revolution, it just launched in Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Singapore. It's launching in Latin America. theatrically before August. It's launching in the UK next week. None of those deals would be possible, but because it's a Lionsgate movie and they have these slate output deals and it performed far above what it was expected to in the United States, it triggered all these deals. So now it's going to the Globe in a way the Globe has to pay for. So that's cool. So we've actually found the answer to the question is non-intuitive. And I would say this applies to every single thing. Like if you have a product, just connect deeply with the audience that most needs it and most loves it and serve them, and then let them be your voice out to the masses and do it through curiosity. And that just works. It works as a business and it works as an audience. So what's funny is with this, are you just preaching to the choir? It's actually the wrong way to look at an industry is the unfortunate truth. The right way is to say, can I make a product that a group of people that I know better than the studios will love? And can I just serve them with that product? And then you just watch the snowball roll down the hill.
Love it. For a time, right, Hollywood was making big Christian films. You have Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur. There were others that didn't star Charlton Heston, I'm sure.
Yeah, a few. Yeah.
But then it seems it fell out of vogue to the point where when Passion of the Christ came along, it was controversial.
Yeah.
Which shocked me even as a teenager when the film came out. I'm just looking at the numbers of Christians in the United States. It's the major religion of the United States. Seems like this is a no-brainer. We do biopics of every other character. What happened that Christian films fell out of vogue? Why is Hollywood
I have a
averse?
This whole thing has been our fault. Like we want to villainize and blame this evil sign on a hill that reads Hollywood. I love history, I'm a student of history. And so we've had a couple premieres, American Underdog and Mom's Night Out for Sonia premiered at the Chinese Theater, as did Jesus Revolution. The first film to premiere at that venue, its most famous venue for premieres, was DeMille's King of Kings, silent movie. And I remember the first time we had a premiere there, Under Glass, were from, because they do film memorabilia and they rotate it in the Chinese Theater. It was the Ten Commandments from Charlton Heston's movie. So there's great faith history. So I always wondered, what happened? And I actually had this illuminating conversation with Robbie Bear, who's his family is the site movie guide, and they advocate for faith and values. And they studied it back to its history. The Catholic Church and the Baptist Church had this advocacy in Hollywood for a long time. And that's when there was a heyday of biblical epics. It was actually the Baptists, we pulled out. We actually abandoned the playing field. We're not the victim in this culture war or whatever you want to call it. We left. I don't know why, but we pulled out of advocating for morality and biblical worldview, and then also biblical stories. And when that happened, that's when sort of the 60s happened, and there was a dark turn in content. And so this whole thing has been, we've abandoned a very powerful part of society to our peril. And I have not found, by and large, my faith has been an asset to me working within the studio system. Now I've existed in entertainment since I was 15 years old, and so I'm comfortable in that world. But the way to frame it with the studios that we found is not we're right and you're wrong. It's actually just we are serving an audience of interest that you do not understand. And that has given me a huge leg up. So I would say that I've made, frankly, more money. I've been able to make more product through the studio system. I've been able to get more films made because we're talking to them about an audience they don't understand. And I think sometimes Christians, we hold ourselves hostage to our own paradigms. It's sort of like an elephant at the circus. That elephant grows up and its leg is tied to a pole and it can't move. And then when it's young and it can't move, it's tied to a pole. But then when it grows up, they tie that elephant with a string to that same pole and it'll stay right there. Well, Well, that it could just rip free and run away, but it's trapped in its own mindset.
Right.
And I think that we have this mindset that we're already defeated, and that's just not true. And I've found that there is an uprising on behalf of Christianity in Hollywood at all levels. It is difficult, and probably will get more difficult to get through some of these systems of content control. But I have found that the best thing we can do is to try to get really disciplined in our craft and to just have a mindset of offense. So it says in the Bible, Paul says to Peter, on this rock I'll build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Like, nobody's going to throw a gate at you. A gate's not a weapon. Gates are meant to be stormed. And we've lost that mindset that places like, these are places that we belong as Christians, and let's discipline ourselves. Let's try to hone this craft over a long period of time, and then let's try to infuse it with what we believe most in.
But even if there's not someone advocating there for this audience or this morality, you do wonder why someone didn't figure it out sooner. I mean, again, when Passion of the Christ came out, I remember wondering, like, first of all, thinking, this is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
There's a huge audience for this.
Yeah.
Why didn't someone, even if there was no person saying, hey, you should do these kind of movies, why didn't Hollywood figure that out sooner, even without an advocate?
What's interesting is that the same reason that they didn't figure it out is the same reason why there is a stigma that faith-based entertainment is cheap and cheesy and or inauthentic to my experience, because there's this massive gap between a middle American way of thinking. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and then I commute to LA to work a couple days a week. And it's like there's a vast difference in ways of thinking and just culture. And so what you have is you have people that understand the audience and are loyal to it and understand Christianity. And then you have people that understand the industry and have dedicated themselves to the craft of film and have dedicated themselves to understanding how to navigate the entertainment industry. And you have this massive gap in the middle. So you have Christians saying, we need to make Christian movies. So, well, if I wanted to be a heart surgeon and be like, God's calling me to be a heart surgeon, I wouldn't just go cut someone open. You know, there's a process of learning your craft, and that process is not celebrated. So you have a lot of people jumping into waters that they don't fully understand, that they're not equipped to do, because they're so passionate about the worldview, and that typically leads to things that are not well made. Then you have Hollywood saying there's this massive audience, but they just don't understand the audience. They don't understand the material. Like, good luck, they will never do it right. And so there's this gap. And so to me, one of the challenges that we all have before us is to sort of bridge that gap and learn how to harness and utilize these distribution mechanisms that took 100 years to build, and help some people understand how to reach our audience, and discipline ourselves to learning the craft of film and learning the principles of the entertainment business and getting in the game, as it were, but still staying true to our ethos and the message that because what happens is there are Christians that get in and then they go silent, and then they don't champion their beliefs in their work.
Yeah, so why is that? Why do some Christians get in and go silent? Or we could say, why before Mel Gibson did not more Christian filmmakers step up and do this? And then we're glad that it's happening now.
Yeah.
People such as yourself, filmmakers who make The Chosen, who are doing good, high quality content. But the other question before I leave this idea is, if Hollywood is not anti-Christian, why do people go silent? And what about stories you hear like Jim Caviezel, who I interviewed, and feels like I'm not getting cast and stuff because I did this movie?
I came in the game post Passion of the Christ, post Sony making faith-based films successful. So I think it was post a wake-up call of Hollywood saying, like, we need to get over ourselves. There's an audience here. Hollywood is, there's just not a lot of Christianity in Hollywood at all. There's a horrific lack of representation. And people, they just want to impress their immediate social circle. And they want to do things that are going to be popular at cocktail parties in LA. Well, the stuff that's going to reach middle America and reach the Christian audience is not going to be popular at cocktail parties in LA. So I think that there's a bias towards entertaining those around you, if that makes sense. And unfortunately, there's just this massive gap between these worlds that I'm in. And so on one level, there is that problem. I think in a modern iteration, there's less and less of being, politics is its own thing, but in terms of just your faith, there's less and less of that. But there's no more understanding of the audience today than there was 15 years ago. The studios in Hollywood, they don't understand our audience, nor will they.
But you don't believe it's antagonistic in any way. Not that I'm hoping it's antagonistic. I want to know
unfortunately, I just don't think we've gotten good enough at what we do. And again, there was antagonism with the Passion of the Christ. Jim is one of the best actors in our industry. He's amazing. And so I don't know his side of the story. I know that was sort of 10 years before I got in. I got in 2010. And so I would say there's much, much less antagonism towards just people of faith if you frame it that I understand an audience in ways that you'll never understand and there's business to be made. I think as disruption hit the industry and as waves of disruption hit the industry, what do they say? When your pain outweighs your fear, change can begin. A lot of studios got very interested in any audience that was quote unquote bankable. So as movie stars became unbankable, and then it was a franchise war, which is a high risk, horribly expensive game to play, they asked, okay, what's reasonably bankable? And as faith films performed, they've gotten more open to that. So I would say that there's a lot less antagonism now than there was in my experience. But I can only speak from my experience. Sure. And I would say that there's a lot of people that are just, they've been people of faith or values or whatever the whole time, and they've reached an end of doing things they no longer believe in. And they want to contribute and give back and do things that matter. And that leads to like Kelsey Grammer being in our movie, right. Or even Michael Burns, Vice Chair of Lionsgate, is, has a real strong faith, and he wants to manifest that in content, and as great as John Wick and Hunger Games are, he wants to see values back in content. So I think there's even in LA a feeling that content has gone off the rails and gone way too far, and needs to be pulled back. And that's it. So as there's sort of frankly a pull to the left in content, and whatever you'd call just elitist content, like woke content or whatever, which nobody likes. When surveyed, Democrats don't like it anymore, Republicans. It's fascinating. But there is an uprising of people saying that, combined with the fact that there's just, I'll give you a stat, 55% on streamers, 55% of shows categorized as teen are TVMA. And that leads to shows like Euphoria, or 13 Reasons Why. And I think that there's a lot of executives that are parents that are like, this has just gone too far. Like I have to rectify my belief system to my skill.
And is it they're actually wanting to not go that far, or just put in a counterbalance where they have, okay, we're going to keep doing shows like Euphoria, but I also want to now do a good show? It's
that. They want to, they're not going to, here's what I tell people: your movie ticket or your consumption habits are your vote. Hollywood, as it got bought by corporations, is an entity. Anything that makes money, especially as disruption creates more risk, they will make more of anything that makes money. There is no question of its morality or it's good for society. And so I think that a lot of executives, a lot of people, a lot of content creators are saying, like, I've done these things that are really successful, but I really don't believe in them, and I actually think they're hurting people. And I really want to do something that my kids can watch that will actually make us feel good and hopeful and infused with, like Angel says, just stories that are infused with light and things that we can all agree with.
There's another subset of the faithful audience that I want to ask you about that's always been very curious to me. Again, maybe just because the gap between the way I think and the way they think is very different. And that's the faithful audience who really can't tolerate things, it seems like, unless they're overtly Christian. I'll see this comment where, there's an inspiring story. And you see comments on Facebook, well, you should just read the Bible. The Bible is all you need. It's probably not a huge audience, right? But there is that audience. What do you say to those people?
I mean, look, first of all, we love them and we're here to serve them to the maximum extent of possible. I have the good fortune that my parents are, that boomer generation. If the Bible Belt in America had a buckle, it would be Birmingham, Alabama, where I was raised. And so, one of the questions I ask with the films we make is like, will my mom watch this and will she like it? And I would say this: there's a baton being passed in Christianity. I'm what they would call a geriatric millennial. I'm a year one millennial, or a zennial, which is millennials that don't want to claim the category. But we've gotten old basically. We have kids and we're saying how what do we do with our kids? And there's this we're the first generation of parents dealing with platforms at scale, and there's this. It's like the walls of our homes have collapsed, and there's all of these influences that are pouring over them, which is why entities like Angel are so important, and declaring independence from this system is so important. And so I would say that there is an audience that's older and probably more brittle. But for us, it really started with the movie I Can Only Imagine. There was a line of thinking that you could do one or the other, but not both. You could entertain my parents and make something low cost and thump you over the head and way too overt, or you had to go out in the mainstream and just do spiritual things like The Shack, which is a great movie, a great book. And we challenged that to say, I don't think that I don't think my parents are walking out of a movie, I don't think I would walk out of a movie because of the message in something, as long as it's well done. And so what I learned is that we didn't have to pick. And I felt with I Can Only Imagine, I think we can do both. I think we can make a film that is infused with everything that my mom and dad want, and a story of the transformational power of the gospel. I remember when Bart said, I know God is real because of the change I saw in my dad. I watched a monster transform my best friend and the man I wanted to become. And that led to the song I Can Only Imagine. So I thought, okay, the core audience will love that, but I think I can make it well enough, or at least try, to entertain me, And what we've actually found is our audience is dying for multi-generational experiences. And so if you look at a movie like Jesus Revolution, there's a young love story. There's Kelsey Grammer as an old pastor. There's Jonathan Rumi's portrayal, which is brilliant in the movie. And so three separate generations have different ways into the story. And what we learned is our audience was actually dying for multi-generational experiences. So instead of just making something for, my mom, or, and then doing something different for me, actually what they wanted was someone trying to make something for both, and something that we could all watch together and enjoy.
I love that.
And that has been overlooked. And so what we found is that you can do both. Now, there's 4 words in the King James Bible that if I say in my movie, my mom won't show up, There's also the realization that they judge films on a different standard. So they talk about Christian films in a certain way, but my dad went and saw Top Gun 6 times, which is an amazing movie, And I'm like, that's not fair. So there's language in Top Gun. But I think you just have to, instead of resenting an audience, and it's better to embrace the audience and try to understand them, love them, lead them, give them a great product.
And what's causing that now? Because I agree, it's you're doing it, others are doing it now. What's leading to that change?
I consider the filmmaking to be much more of a craft than an art form. A craft is something that you just hone every day. You just get a little better at it every day. And I think what George Lucas said is true. It's certainly true for all my movies, that he said films are never complete, they're only abandoned, But I think that we're just at this inflection point where we've been able to make, really apply ourselves to understand how to make a film really entertaining to an audience. This is the entertainment industry. This is not the ideological industry.
Right.
So you must first entertain. That's why we all go. We want to have an emotional experience that's life-changing or satisfying at the very least. And so I think that we're just now at a point where we're able to have these films be successful enough that people will give us the resources. Again, your movie ticket is your vote. So as the films sell, then the budgets are no longer $3 million. Then they're $10 million or $15 million. And we're able to make the films better and better. And then as stars see, like I remember when Dennis Quaid got a huge Esurance gig after I Can Only Imagine. And he's like, put me in all these movies, my gosh, because Esurance saw that it was a strong showing in Middle America. At least that's what he said. And so as stars are more comfortable working on them, as we have more resources to make them, as we learn more about the craft of film, as we start talking to each other, as we start collaborating, then we get to this inflection point where people realize, oh, I'm really going to enjoy this experience. Yeah. And the more they realize they're going to enjoy this experience, they realize, I'm not only going to enjoy this experience, my parents are going to enjoy this experience. And actually, my kids are going to enjoy this experience. It's a very rare thing to be able to say that,
yeah.
you know? And then I think we're right on the cusp of that kind of new wave, new renaissance, whatever you want to call it, because I think we finally bled in the arena long enough to figure out what an audience wants and how to entertain them and how to make these things. It's hard stuff. It's a hard business. Yeah. I remember Sean Astin, we did a couple films together, and he said, I see you guys and like the Kendricks and Devon Franklin, and Dallas is like frontiersmen and pioneers. I said, thanks, Sean. That's high praise from Samwise and Rudi. And he said, but Jon, trouble is most frontiersmen die on the frontier. I'm like, well, the trail will be blazed and marked and will be like frozen pointing to the summit. But that really is the hope and dream. It's a privilege and a rare thing to be a part of any industry that is emerging right in front of you. Yeah. That's a rare thing that you can't control in life. Whether that's 70s tech, or 80s tech or 70s film, that group of directors inventing the blockbuster. It's very rare to just have the luck or providence to be in a moment in time where something is emerging, and to be able to bleed on the bleeding edge of that and shape it a little bit is a true privilege. And the hope is that we are a first wave, and behind us is a group of talent that will far outshine and out-accomplish anything that we're able to do, and that we can set the stage for that.
That's a great goal. I want to ask you specifically about, you mentioned Jonathan Roumie and his role in your film, Jesus Revolution. How much of a factor did Jonathan Roumie's role in The Chosen play in casting him?
Well, what did Picasso say? Good artists copy, great artists steal. I did feel like The Chosen is some of the magic of it, and I was just deeply curious. I love this quote from Bono when he says, don't ask God to bless what you're doing, just find out whatever God's doing and get involved in it. It's already blessed. So I'm just very curious. And it was cool to see like what's going on over there. Like my love and obsession and core expertise is theatrical movies, both independently and inside the studio system. This angel model is like a whole new thing.
Right.
This is cool. Like, what is this? And as I got to know Dallas and Jonathan, we all just became very good friends and collaborators. And I just found Jonathan to be, he's one of those guys where all the success that he's experiencing is so deserved because, for 20 years, he was like a working character actor and voice actor. And he recently sat down with Gary Sinise, who's a good friend, and he had to remind Gary, he's like, I'm the cop that arrested you 20 years ago in a single episode of CSI or something like that, And so, the grit to endure as long as he did and then have this moment of surrender, that led him to The Chosen, has just forged a great guy and a very humble guy and a ton of character.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that a person that's that great is also that great of an actor. Like he is as dedicated to his craft as he is dedicated to God. And he's really, really good. And so as I was casting Jesus Revolution, and watching What the Chosen, when I got to know him and this role was like perfect, I'm like, when does The Chosen stop and when does it resume? And, and then Akis, who is the cinematographer of The Chosen, I got to know him. And I'm like, Dallas, there might be some things that I might want to borrow, in between seasons, just to keep him fresh, and he dedicated himself to the role. I loved working with him. Every scene that he was in with Kelsey Grammer was magic. And he just brings an intensity and passion that is so rare. And he's just really, really good.
You've mentioned Angel Studios. I understand that you're going to be partnering with Angel Studios. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I'll tell you everything, and then I guess the lawyers will tell us what to edit out. I don't know. I just, I've gotten to know the Harmons and Angel, and I just love doing really meaningful work with great people that I can learn from. And I love the gauntlet and the idea of let's make something together that will be here long after we're not. Whenever it's really hot or cold on a film set, we say pain is temporary, film is forever. So we've been looking for, as we're launching some things that I'm actually not able to talk about in terms of what we're, what we're asking is, what are ways that we can serve the audience at home in a way that's safe, and curated, and then how can we continue to bring a new standard of quality and trust to this audience, and I'm convinced that we have to break free from. I'm deep in it out there, but I'm convinced that we have to break free and almost declare independence from the studio systems to really, in the future, to serve our audience well. So we've been talking about that for a while. And so with Angel, it's great to even, we have a great career, in terms of the films that we make inside the studio system. I'm glad that the Faith audience is still showing up for movies. That's a wonderful thing. But the disruption and the innovation that's happening in Angel is just really, really cool. And it's something that I've wanted to be a part of for a long time. And we've just let those relationships develop. And so it really involves three areas. Number one, I love true stories. And so there was a project, Truth and Conviction, that I just loved. And it ended up there was a way to join that project and to have Keem Story and myself join that project in a way that would get it made quicker and would amplify it, God willing. And my grandfather received the Medal of Honor in World War II, so I'm a huge fan of that time period.
For those who don't know, Truth and Conviction is a story about teenage resistance fighters in Nazi Germany.
And my oldest is 14, and the idea of telling stories of teenagers standing up for truth and conviction
against Hitler.
Hitler. I had no idea this story existed. I loved it. True stories, that's our wheelhouse. That's what we love to do. And so I became very excited about a potential to joint venture and join that project and help get it made quickly. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is one of my true life obsessions is early American history, specifically the Revolutionary War. And we've talked a lot about that. I just talk about a story of entrepreneurism and just the story of how our country came to be is untold, and it's not going to be told well within the studio system. I can guarantee you that, if it's told at all. And it just seemed the natural project to collaborate on with Angel.
Let's talk about the early American Revolution.
Yeah.
And that's another one that I agree with you. It seems like it's a aspect of American history that many Americans love. They're passionate about. They're fascinated by the forward-thinkingness of the founders.
Yeah.
Why do you say that Hollywood's not going to do a good job of it, even if they tackled it, which they won't? I'm interested to know why you say that.
Because telling the story of our founding fathers and that generation, that time, accurately and well and dramatically, it just wouldn't be popular at cocktail parties in LA, frankly. And that's why they won't do it.
Because the politics don't align with...
Yeah. And I think it's absurd to think that a generation that threw a gauntlet of equality and the fact that, all men are created equal snuck into our Declaration of Independence, which is amazing. It's a miracle that happened, and a fascinating story of why it did. And to think that we've been trying to understand and live up to and perfect and, a more full understanding of that, of equality. And the fact that we've accomplished that, and there's still so much work to do, but we've accomplished it at some level. The idea that means that their stories are not valid is crazy to me. And if we don't understand our origin and our history and why we're here, we're a nation bound by ideas, not by land or race, or we're a country of entrepreneurs and dreamers and immigrants, and we're bound together by this concept of a form of government that we thought of, and this collection of ideas and ideals. And to the extent we lose sight of that, we sort of would be at risk of losing the ties that bind. And to the extent that we lose sight of our own origin story, that would be a horrible thing. And when you really spend time understanding this country, why it's here, where we came from, the minds that gave it to us, the story of why we're here, you hold the thing way more precious. You realize that it is the American experiment, and it has been entrusted to us, and it's a miracle that it worked at all. It's a miracle that we're still here, and it is something to steward as this, what the founding fathers wanted us to be, which was the shining city on a hill, that this could work. And so the disdain goes away when you understand how unique this country is, not perfect, but incredibly unique. And you only understand that by the stories. And so the extent that we eradicate those stories or call them, we say that they're not valid, we would do so to our own harm.
And last question, just for clarification, you've mentioned that you think you need to break free from the Hollywood system, or the studio system. Sorry, the studio system. Yeah. And I love that because you also seem to have a very fair-minded view of the studio system and the Hollywood culture, that it's not that they're antagonistic or our enemy or anything. So I'm curious, what is the determining feature that makes you say we need to break free?
There's a line in Hamilton, where it says, stupid that I'm quoting the lyrics of Hamilton, where he says, "God help and forgive me, I want to build something that's going to outlive me." I think when we first started working with Lionsgate, because we were raising money independently at the time, John Feltheimer, the CEO, said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to be seen as an entrepreneur first and a filmmaker second. I want access. I want to understand how this building works." And I said, most times when you work with a studio, it's like you have a rep and there's a curtain and you can't get behind the curtain and you can't see how the building works. And so a lot of people would say, as Christians, like, we need to have a studio of our own or whatever. Well, nobody's been able to get far enough under the hood to understand, is it feasible? How do they work? And I learned to love early on the intersection of the art and the business of what we do. And there's a ton of business in the art. There's a ton of art in the business. And thinking holistically by understanding how everything from a blank screen in Final Draft to a distributed product, how it works. And true to his word, felt was like the entrepreneurism is the word that drives this company forward. Go for it. And it was like a gerbil being let out of its cage. And so for 4.5 years, we've studied at depth every single division of the company and have made great friends with every head of every single division. And sort of like having the plans to the Death Star in Star Wars, we can do this. We can do, our audience is large enough. And underserved enough. It's the largest underserved niche in the world. It's 2.5 billion people that have the same affinity to the same name we all count time by. I think 4.5 years has infused me with the idea that this is possible, that we could have one of these institutions of our own that is independent of a system that we can't control, that is getting further and further from our families. And that thing, well constructed, could be here in 100 years and doing the same thing that it's intended to do. And that's a level of legacy, and I think that's something worth giving your life to. And I just think that while it's great to transact with a company, I tell people my blood bleeds Lionsgate blue. I see the trends. There's no way Lionsgate's going to be owned in the structure that it's owned right now in 24 months, 36 months. And I don't think the trends are in our favor as Christians with both the streamers and the mergers and acquisitions bloodbath that's happening right now. It's mass consolidation, headed to Silicon Valley. I think we can do this ourselves, and we can make something that is somewhat bulletproof, that empowers generations of talent, reaches generations of people, and can get Christianity and its virtues to the world on an industrial scale that will last longer than we will. So because that's such a joint ambition between Angel and what we're doing at Kingdom, the idea was, okay, how can we do it together? And that's the question that we've been trying to answer. And the question that we've been asking is, what can we do together that none of us can do alone? And the more we can find ways to work together towards an outcome we all believe in, I think the more we can enjoy the fruits of that labor. And so I just think there's nothing that I can find, having been deep inside that system, that would say we couldn't create something together that could sit right beside Universal and Paramount and even Disney over the course of time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool dream. Why not? I mean, I think life is too short for small dreams.
Right.
And so I just think that one of the things that we've been trying to understand is why Toy Story has never become Pixar, or Star Wars has never become Lucasfilm with faith. There's been these anomaly events like The Passion. We've been a part of a couple of them, like The Chosen. But there's never been an institution really set up to succeed on the back of some of these wins. And, you know, Disney is the great brand. It's never been as far from my family as it is today. But the idea that something like that can be created and celebrating its 100th year, I'm like, why can't we do that?
Yeah.
You know, is the addressable market not big enough? No, there's 2.5 billion people. Are these films not profitable enough? No, my last film, they're making, if they're done well and done responsibly, they're making lots of money. Are the funding sources not available? No, they're available. So all the pieces are there. I actually think what's missing is this conversation of us having, I think sometimes when you succeed in this business, it's so hyper competitive, you want to sort of hide it from everybody. So you have a mindset of scarcity.
Right.
I think if you replace that with a mindset of abundance and say, we're not really competing against each other. We're competing against these large, we're competing against Euphoria, and we're competing against Game of Thrones. And what we're competing for is mind share of our own children.
Thank you so much for opening us up to the world, kind of behind the curtain of what's going on here. And thank you so much.
It's a great conversation. And we'll just see if Sean's right, if we're going to, we're going to be frontiersmen that die on the frontier, or if we summit the mountain. Either one is worth it.
I agree. And it's a great adventure. And I think you will succeed.
Lightwise is a video podcast production of Angel Studios, released every other Tuesday. To watch more episodes or be notified of new episodes of Lightwise, click subscribe or download the Angel app now, wherever you get your apps. If you'd prefer to listen instead of watch, you can find the Lightwise audio podcast version wherever you get your podcasts. Also, to make sure you don't miss the upcoming inspirational series Truth and Conviction, go to angel.com/truth. This episode of Lightwise was hosted by Joel Ackerman. It was written and directed by Joel Ackerman, produced by Cameron Jackson and John Shea Van Sickle, and edited by Cameron Jackson, with sound recording by GARRETT BRIGGS and sound mixing by BRYAN DENSLEY.